The Galactic Council classifies weapons, plagues, and supernovas as threats. We classify 3 human words as worse. Hold my beer. Seriously. Everything. I've broken up fights between methane breathers and oxygen breathers. I've confiscated contraband that shouldn't physically exist in this dimension, and I've even filed incident reports for a Kirathi who tried to smuggle live plasma eels in their digestive tract. Don't ask. Just don't. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepared me for humans. My name is Krell, by the way. 4 arms, chitinous exoskeleton, compound eyes that can see in 17 different spectrums. I'm what you might call intimidating. At least, I was intimidating before I met them. Now I'm just tired. So incredibly tired. It started on a Tuesday. Well, what passes for Tuesday on Station 17, which is this massive way station on the border between the Terran Coalition and the Vrexian Empire. The place is basically a truck stop for starships, a refueling depot, mediocre food courts, bars that serve liquids you probably shouldn't drink but do anyway because space travel is boring as hell. I was doing my usual rounds, checking for the standard nonsense, public intoxication, unlicensed weapons, someone trying to sell authentic Earth artifacts that are obviously manufactured on Proxima Station. You know, Tuesday stuff. Then I heard it. Hold my beer. 3 words. Just 3 simple words in that bizarre Earth language they call English. I didn't think much of it at first, honestly. I was walking past O'Malley's, which is this dingy little establishment that caters mostly to humans and species who can tolerate ethanol without dying. The place smells like recycled air and poor decisions, which is apparently exactly what humans look for in a quality drinking establishment. I glanced inside through the viewport, just a routine check, and saw this human, average height for their species, maybe a bit stocky, wearing a jumpsuit with some kind of corporate logo I didn't recognize. He was handing a cylindrical container to his friend, another human with this enormous grin on their face. Hold my beer, the first one said again, and I watched as he walked toward the bar's broken gravity generator. Yeah, broken. The thing had been malfunctioning for 3 days, and station maintenance had filed 17 separate reports saying it was beyond repair, needed complete replacement, budget approval pending, blah blah blah. You know how it goes. This human, he looked at the generator for maybe 15 seconds. 15 seconds. Then he pulled out what appeared to be a standard multi-tool, the kind you can buy at any station supply shop for like 12 credits, and started banging on the housing with the handle. I was about to go in there and cite him for vandalism of station property when the gravity generator hummed to life. Perfect, stable 1.02 standard gravities. The diagnostic panel went from angry red to peaceful green faster than a Skitterix can shed their skin. The human retrieved his beverage from his friend, took a long drink, and sat back down like he hadn't just fixed something that 7 certified engineers had declared unsalvageable. I stood there, just stood there in the corridor like an idiot, all 4 arms hanging uselessly at my sides, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. That should have been my first clue. That should have been the moment I filed a report, started a database entry, something. But no, I just logged it as a quirk and moved on with my patrol. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have immediately contacted the Galactic Council, initiated a threat assessment protocol, and probably requested a transfer to literally anywhere else in the galaxy. Because that phrase, those 3 innocent-sounding words, they're not innocent at all. They're a warning, a prophecy, a harbinger of absolute chaos wrapped in casual human confidence in what I can only describe as weaponized stupidity mixed with impossible competence. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So after the gravity generator incident, I went back to my normal routine, filed my reports, broke up the usual disputes, pretended I understood why humans insist on consuming fermented plant matter for recreation. Life went on. Except it didn't. Not really. 2 days later I got a message from my counterpart on Station 9. A Valkyrian named Thresh, who I'd trained with at the academy. Thresh is meticulous, paranoid to a fault, the kind of officer who files reports about reports. So when he contacted me on a private channel, I knew something was bothering him. Krell, he said, his translator rendering his chittering sounds into standard galactic common. Have you encountered any humans lately doing, well, impossible things? I felt my secondary arms twitch involuntarily. Define impossible. I mean, I watched one of them repair a plasma conduit with chewing gum and wire. The conduit was actively venting superheated gas. He should have been vaporized. Instead, he fixed it, and now it's running more efficiently than before installation. Did he? I asked slowly, already knowing the answer. Did he say anything before attempting this? Yeah, actually. Something about holding his beer. Why? That's when I knew. That's when the cold realization started creeping up my spine, if I had a spine in the traditional sense. I started digging, called in favors, accessed incident reports from across the Transit Authority network, even reached out to a few contacts in galactic intelligence. Turns out I wasn't the only one noticing a pattern. Station 42 reported a human who'd said the phrase before manually piloting a freighter with a completely dead navigation system through an asteroid field. Not around it. Through it. Didn't even scratch the hull. The Nexus Prime mining colony documented a human engineer who'd uttered those words before jumping into a collapsing mine shaft to rescue trapped workers. She came back up with all 7 miners plus the mining equipment everyone had assumed was lost, and somehow had time to reinforce the support beams while she was down there. A military outpost near the border zones logged a human saying it before disarming a Kren battle drone with nothing but a maintenance ladder and what the report described as unprecedented audacity. Every single incident followed the same pattern. Human assesses impossible situation. Human makes verbal declaration about beverage custody. Human proceeds to do the impossible thing anyway. Reality apparently takes a coffee break. I compiled everything into a database. Dates, times, locations, outcomes, witness statements. The data was alarming. 63 documented incidents in the last standard month alone, and those were just the ones that got officially reported. The correlation was undeniable. My captain, a stern Dravexian named Aedzarath who'd seen combat in 3 different wars and supposedly didn't fear anything, reviewed my findings with increasing concern. Her scales shifted through colors I'd never seen before, which in Dravexian body language roughly translates to "what the actual hell." "This needs to go higher," she said finally. Way higher. So it did. Within a week I was presenting my data to a subcommittee of the Galactic Security Council. Me, a mid-level security officer from a border station standing in front of representatives from 47 different species, explaining why 3 words in an Earth language were potentially the most dangerous phrase in known space. They thought I was crazy at first. I could see it in their various forms of body language. The Heptarian delegate literally laughed, which sounds like grinding metal and is extremely unsettling. Then I showed them the footage, compilation after compilation of humans doing things that violated somewhere between 3 and 7 laws of physics per incident. A human named Jake Patterson rewiring a ship's entire electrical system while it was still powered on. Another one called Chris Okafor talking down a rogue AI by somehow befriending it through shared appreciation of ancient Earth music. A third human, Lisa Chen, who'd manufactured replacement parts for a critical life support system using a 3D printer, duct tape, and what she described as creative interpretation of the specs. Every single one preceded by those 3 words. The laughter stopped. The room went very, very quiet. "What do they mean?" asked Council Member Vril, a species known for their analytical minds and complete lack of humor. "These words, what is their significance?" I'd done my research on this too. Near as I can tell, it's an Earth idiom. It means the human is about to attempt something dangerous, stupid, or both. The beverage transfer is symbolic, a way of saying they need their hands free for whatever insanity they're about to commit. And they succeed? Ril's optical sensors focused intently on me. At what rate do these attempts succeed? I pulled up the statistics. 94.7% success rate. Council member. The room erupted into chaos. 47 different species all trying to talk at once sounds exactly as horrible as you'd imagine. "That's impossible," someone shouted. "Yeah, well, that's kind of the whole problem, isn't it?" The council wanted specifics. They wanted detailed case studies, first-hand accounts, evidence that couldn't be dismissed as exaggeration or faulty reporting. So I gave them the one that still keeps me awake during my rest cycles. Station Meridian. Deep space research facility studying exotic matter interactions. Cutting-edge science. Top-tier equipment. Crew of about 200, representing a dozen different species. And one human engineer named Rick Donovan. I wasn't there personally, thank the eternal void, but I've reviewed the security footage so many times I might as well have been. I've also interviewed everyone who survived, and let me tell you, the looks on their faces when they talk about it. Pure trauma mixed with disbelief. The station's antimatter containment system started failing on a Wednesday. Not a minor glitch, not something you could slap a patch on and call maintenance later. I'm talking catastrophic, cascading failure of the magnetic confinement fields that kept the antimatter from touching regular matter and, annihilating everything in a fireball visible from 3 systems away. The chief engineer, a brilliant Tyvaxian named Gorth, ran the numbers. They had 47 minutes before containment breach. Maybe 50 if they were lucky, which they weren't, because the backup systems had also failed. Something about a micrometeorite hitting a critical junction at exactly the wrong time. Because the universe has a sick sense of humor. Protocol was clear. Evacuate. Get everyone to the escape pods. Put as much distance between yourselves and the station as possible. And pray to whatever deities your species favors that you're far enough away when it goes up. Gorth gave the order. Klaxons started blaring. Emergency lighting kicked in. 200 beings began a very orderly, very terrified evacuation procedure. Everyone except Rick Donovan. Rick was in the containment chamber when the evacuation order came through. He was looking at the failing systems, the error messages cascading across every display panel, the magnetic field strength dropping by the second. By all accounts, he stood there for maybe 30 seconds, just thinking. Then he turned to the assistant engineer who was frantically trying to pull him toward the exit. A young Pelarian named Kix, fresh out of academy, absolutely certain they were all about to die. "Hey Kix," Rick said, and his voice on the recording is so casual it's actually disturbing. "Hold my coffee, would you?" Kix, bless their heart, actually took the thermal container. Probably out of pure instinct, muscle memory from working with Rick for 6 months. The kid told me later that their brain just short-circuited. Evacuation alarm screaming, countdown to total annihilation ticking away. And this human is worried about his beverage. Rick walked up to the primary containment console. The thing was throwing error codes that didn't even have names yet. The kind of failures that would take a team of engineers days to diagnose, under normal circumstances. He had 43 minutes. He cracked his knuckles. Actual audible cracking sounds from his finger joints, which is apparently something humans do before physical exertion. Then he started typing. "I'm not an engineer, right? I'm security. But I've had enough Tevaxian specialists explain to me what Rick did, and every single one of them uses words like shouldn't be possible and violates fundamental principles, and my personal favorite, I don't want to talk about it anymore." He bypassed 17 safety protocols that existed specifically to prevent what he was attempting. He rerouted power from life support, environmental controls, even the artificial gravity in 3 sections of the station. He manually recalibrated the magnetic field generators using equations he apparently just knew off the top of his head. No computer assistance, just mental math while reality counted down to annihilation. 20 minutes in, Gorth came back. Couldn't help himself. The Tyvaxian had spent 15 years designing that containment system, and he needed to see what this human was doing to his life's work. He found Rick elbow deep in a maintenance panel, physically rewiring connections while simultaneously running simulations on 3 different terminals. The man had somehow grown extra hands, except he hadn't. He was just moving that fast with that much precision. "What are you doing?" Gorth demanded. "The math doesn't work. The power requirements alone, it's impossible." "Yeah," Rick said, not even looking up from his work. "Math said bumblebees can't fly too. And yet, that quote made it into the official report. I have no idea what bumblebees are. And honestly, I don't want to know." 15 minutes left. Rick implemented something he called a jury-rigged cascade stabilization loop, which I'm told is technical jargon for thing that shouldn't exist but does now. He redirected the antimatter containment through a series of secondary and tertiary systems that weren't designed for that purpose, creating a completely new configuration that had never been tested, simulated, or even theorized. 5 minutes left. The entire engineering team had returned now. Evacuation be damned. Watching this human rewrite physics in real time. The magnetic field strength was climbing. Slowly. Impossibly. It was climbing. 2 minutes left. Rick pulled his hands out of the panel, closed the maintenance hatch, and pressed one final command sequence. The containment field stabilized. Not just stabilized, improved. The system was running at 103% efficiency. Better than factory specifications. Better than it had ever run before. Rick wiped his hands on his jumpsuit, retrieved his coffee from Kix, who was standing there with their mouth hanging open in a very un-Pelarian display of shock, and took a long drink. He said. "Still warm." The station didn't explode. Rick went back to his quarters, logged his repair work with a maintenance report that read "fixed the thing, should be good now," and apparently took a nap. Gorth had to be sedated. I read that report 7 times before I believed it. Watched the footage another dozen times after that. Every time, the same impossible result. Every time, my concern grew a little deeper. Because here's what really terrifies me about this incident. Rick Donovan isn't special among humans. He's not their best engineer. Not some legendary figure. He's just a guy. A regular human doing a regular job. If this is what regular humans can do when they decide reality is more of a suggestion than a rule, what happens when they really try? The council was unsettled after the Meridian Station report. Good. They should have been. But some of them, particularly the military representatives, still thought this was just engineering luck. Flukes, statistical anomalies that happen to cluster around humans because I don't know, the universe plays favorites apparently. So I showed them what happened during Operation Unified Front. This was supposed to be a routine joint military exercise. 5 species, coordinated fleet maneuvers, simulated combat scenarios against AI-controlled hostiles, the kind of thing the Galactic Defense Force runs twice a year to make sure everyone can work together if, something actually tries to invade. The human contingent sent 3 fighter squadrons. 36 pilots total. Among them was Lieutenant Jenny Torres, callsign Falcon, a combat pilot with exactly 4 years of experience. Not a rookie, but certainly not a decorated veteran either. Just another pilot in the formation. The exercise took place in the Kessler Proving Grounds, this massive empty sector of space, set up with sensor networks and safety protocols. The simulation was designed to be challenging but manageable. A fleet of hostile drones programmed with adaptive AI meant to test coordination and tactical flexibility. Command briefed all the pilots. Standard engagement protocols. Stay in formation. Support your wingmates. Follow the battle plan. Simple stuff that every species had drilled into their combat doctrine for centuries. The simulation began exactly as planned. The drone fleet appeared on sensors exactly where intelligence predicted. 5 species worth of fighters moved into position. Weapons hot, communications crisp and professional. Textbook execution. Then the drones adapted. Nobody told the pilots that this simulation was running a new AI program. Experimental software designed to learn and counter tactics in real time. The kind of thing you'd actually face against a sophisticated enemy. The brass wanted to see how the joint force handled unexpected challenges. They handled it poorly. Within 8 minutes, the entire tactical formation had collapsed. The drones were anticipating every maneuver, countering every strategy, exploiting every gap in coordination between species. The Vrexian fighters, built for speed, kept overshooting their positions because the Tholian ships, built for durability, couldn't keep pace. The Kelvorian pilots were trying to implement their standard encirclement doctrine, but the human fighters had never trained for that specific formation and kept breaking the pattern. 12 minutes in, the first fighters started getting tagged by the simulation's weapon locks. Not destroyed. This was an exercise, but marked as casualties and required to withdraw from the combat zone. In a real battle, they'd be dead. 15 minutes in, half the force was eliminated. The remaining pilots were scattered. Communication channels filled with conflicting orders in 4 different languages. Tactical coherence completely gone. The exercise commander, a decorated Vrexian admiral named Thexnor, was about to call the whole thing off. Total failure. Embarrassing, but better to admit defeat in a simulation than get people killed in actual combat. That's when Jenny Torres broke radio silence. Command, this is Falcon. Requesting permission to try something. Admiral Thexnor, to his credit, was desperate enough to listen. Falcon, our formation is broken. We're down 50%. What could you possibly— Yeah, I know, Jenny interrupted, which is apparently very rude in Vrexian military protocol, but I've got an idea. Just need everyone to hold my beer for like 3 minutes. There was a pause. A long pause. The exercise recorder caught 17 different species on the command channel trying to figure out what beverage custody had to do with military tactics. Is this a human idiom? Asked Thextor. Sir, with respect, we really don't have time for cultural translation. I need all remaining fighters to fall back to rally point Theta and wait for my signal. Something in her voice must have convinced him. Or maybe he just figured the exercise was already a disaster. What's one more unorthodox attempt? Either way, he gave the order. 24 remaining fighters retreated to the rally point. The drone fleet, sensing victory, pressed their advantage, moving in for the killing blow on the clustered targets. Tactically stupid to bunch up like that. Every species combat doctrine said so. Jenny's fighter broke from the group. Alone. Single fighter against 47 advanced combat drones with adaptive AI. Falcon, what are you doing? Thexnor demanded. Buying time, sir. Oh, and you might want to tell the safety team to check their sensor calibrations. This is gonna look weird. What happened next took 47 seconds. I've watched the tactical replay at least 100 times and I still don't understand half of it. Jenny Torres flew her fighter in a pattern that shouldn't be possible. She used the gravitational interference from 3 nearby asteroids that weren't supposed to be part of the exercise space, creating a slingshot effect that tripled her velocity. She fired her weapons not at the drones but at specific points in space, creating a web of energy discharge that the drones had to navigate around. Then she flew through her own weapons fire. The safety officers nearly had collective heart attacks. All 7 of them. You don't fly through active energy weapons. That's how you die. Except Jenny had calculated the exact dispersal pattern, the precise timing, and she threaded through the gaps like she was stitching reality together. The drones tried to follow. Their adaptive AI saw a target, calculated intercept courses, predicted her trajectory. They flew right into the energy web she'd created. 17 drones, tagged as destroyed in 6 seconds. The remaining drones recalculated, spread their formation, tried to box her in. Jenny responded by doing something the after-action report called aggressive 3-dimensional maneuvering beyond recommended G-force tolerances. She pulled turns that should have liquefied her internal organs. Humans have this thing called an inertial dampening suit, but it only compensates for so much. She pushed past so much. 15 more drones, eliminated in another 8 seconds. The last 15 drones went full defensive, trying to regroup, reassess. Jenny gave them exactly 2 seconds before she executed what I can only describe as a controlled crash trajectory toward the largest asteroid in the field. The drones followed, because their AI told them a fleeing target is a vulnerable target. Jenny pulled up at the last possible microsecond. The drones, committed to their intercept courses, didn't have time to adjust. 15 impacts. 15 destroyed drones. 0 damage to her fighter. 47 drones, eliminated in 47 seconds by 1 human pilot doing things that rewrote 3 chapters of the Galactic Fighter Combat Manual. Jenny returned to the rally point, her fighter's hull temperature readings off the charts, her voice perfectly calm on the radio. Rally point secured, sir. Ready for the remaining fighters to re-engage on my mark. There were no remaining hostiles to engage. Admiral Thexnor sat in silence for a full minute before responding. Falcon, that was the most. I don't even have words. Thank you, sir. That wasn't a compliment. That was terror. I'm terrified. Please tell me most humans can't do that. Jenny laughed. Actually laughed. Oh no, sir. Most of us are way better pilots than me. I'm just decent. The exercise ended. The tactical AI spent 3 days analyzing Jenny's maneuvers and concluded that her success probability should have been 0.03%. She'd done something that the AI couldn't predict because it violated the fundamental assumptions programmed into its logic. The Galactic Defense Force added an entire new section to their combat training manual titled Accounting for Human Tactical Flexibility. It's 14 chapters long. And Jenny Torres. She got promoted, received commendations from 3 different species, and apparently celebrated by going to a bar and having an actual beer. When I presented this to the council, the military representatives stopped arguing. They stopped pretending this was normal, because if one regular human pilot could do that, what happens when they deploy a whole squadron with that mindset? What happens when an entire fleet decides to hold their collective beer? Nobody wanted to answer that question. The emergency session of the Galactic Security Council lasted 9 hours. 9 hours of representatives from 73 species arguing, debating, and occasionally threatening each other over 3 words in a human language. I sat in the back of the chamber, watching the chaos unfold, wondering how my simple pattern analysis had turned into the biggest security debate in galactic history. Council member Vril opened the floor. We are here to determine an appropriate response to what the reporting officer has termed hold my beer incidents involving human personnel across Galactic Transit Authority space and military operations. Officer Krell, your recommendation. I stood, all 4 arms clasped behind my back in formal posture. Council members, I recommend we implement an automatic threat level escalation protocol whenever this phrase is detected in human communications. Maximum threat level immediate area evacuation. Crisis response teams on standby. The chamber erupted. That's absurd, shouted the Kelvorian delegate, their translator struggling to keep up with their rapid speech. You want us to treat a colloquial phrase as equivalent to a weapons discharge or hostile incursion? Do you understand the resource implications? I understand that we've documented 217 incidents in the last 2 months, I replied, keeping my voice level. 217 situations where humans have said this phrase and then proceeded to break fundamental laws of physics, engineering, or tactical doctrine. The resource cost of preparation is significantly less than the resource cost of cleaning up after they've already done the impossible thing. A Dravexian military commander stood, Scales shifting to aggressive crimson. My pilots train for years to achieve combat proficiency. You're suggesting one human with casual disregard for safety protocols is equivalent to a fleet-level threat. I'm suggesting that human with casual disregard for safety protocols just eliminated 47 combat drones in under a minute using maneuvers that our best tactical AI says were impossible. Sir, that shut them up. Briefly, the debate raged on. Some species representatives argued this was overreaction, that we were allowing fear to dictate policy. Others pointed out that fear is a perfectly rational response when dealing with beings who treat physics as a polite suggestion rather than an immutable law. The Heptarian delegate proposed a compromise. Perhaps we establish a monitoring system, track incidents, require humans to register when they intend to attempt high-risk activities, implement oversight. With respect, council member, I interrupted, which is probably a career-limiting move, but I was past caring. Oversight doesn't work. These incidents happen in seconds. By the time we've detected the phrase, analyzed the situation, and deployed any kind of response, the human has already done whatever insane thing they were planning. Our only option is preventive evacuation. You want us to evacuate every time a human says 3 words. The Polarian observer's translator conveyed absolute disbelief. Yes, exactly yes. Because the alternative is having personnel in the blast radius when Rick Donovan decides to manually recalibrate antimatter containment or Jenny Torres decides gravity is optional. Council member Vril called for order, their voice cutting through the noise. Let us consider the statistical evidence. Officer Krell, what is the injury rate for non-humans in proximity to these incidents? I pulled up the data. Surprisingly low, council member. 8% of incidents result in minor injuries to bystanders. However, 100% of incidents result in extreme stress, psychological trauma from witnessing impossible events, and what medical staff are calling existential crisis regarding the nature of physical reality. And if we don't implement this protocol, then we continue having engineers who need sedation after watching humans repair their life's work in minutes. We continue having military personnel questioning their entire tactical training. We continue having civilians exposed to situations where the laws of physics are, and I cannot stress this enough, apparently negotiable if a human is sufficiently motivated. The vote took another 3 hours of debate, but eventually, with a narrow margin of 51%, the protocol passed. Official designation code Amber H. Hold my beer protocol. When detected, automatic threat level escalation to maximum, immediate area restriction, emergency response teams on standby, non-essential personnel evacuated to safe distance, defined as far enough away that you can't see what the human is doing. The protocol went into effect across all Galactic Transit Authority facilities within a week. Military installations followed 2 weeks later after Admiral Thexnor personally testified that he'd rather face a Kren battle fleet than watch another human pilot decide the rules don't apply to them. Did it seem excessive? Absolutely. Was it necessary? Well, let me tell you about the incident that proved the Council made the right choice. 3 months after the protocol went into effect, I got to see it in action. Lucky me, I was back on Station 17. Because apparently the universe has a sense of irony. Routine shift. Nothing unusual. Just another day of making sure nobody smuggled anything too dangerous through the checkpoint. Then the core reactor started overloading. Not a minor fluctuation. Not a maintenance issue. The primary fusion reactor that powered the entire station, serving as home to 15,000 beings from 60 different species, decided that today was a great day to experience cascading plasma feedback. The engineering team ran diagnostics. The results were, in technical terms, extremely bad. Containment breach in 22 minutes. Reactor explosion would vaporize the station and everything within a 50-kilometer radius. Evacuation was impossible. We had 412 docked ships. And even if we loaded everyone into every available vessel immediately, we'd maybe save 3,000 people. The station administrator was calling for calm while simultaneously updating her will. I was already running worst-case scenarios through my head, trying to figure out which sections we could seal off to buy more time. Then I heard it over the emergency channel. Hey, anybody got a beverage on them? Doesn't matter what kind. I knew that voice. Jack Romano, human maintenance tech. Worked on environmental systems mostly. Nice guy, always polite. Absolutely unremarkable in every way except for the critical fact that he was human. My training kicked in immediately. Muscle memory from the 17 drills we'd run since the protocol implementation. Code Amber H. I announced over station-wide communications, trying to keep my voice steady. I repeat, Code Amber H. In Reactor Section 7, all personnel evacuate to designated safe zones immediately. This is not a drill, Krell. What are you doing? The administrator demanded on the command channel. We don't have time for. Protocol requires immediate evacuation when the phrase is detected. Administrator. Non-negotiable. The phrase. What phrase? We have a reactor breach. We need every engineer we have working on. Ma'am, a human just asked someone to hold his beer in the reactor control room. Get everyone out. Nah. To her credit, she'd read the briefings. She'd seen the reports. She gave the order. Chaos. Beautiful, organized chaos. Emergency teams moving through corridors herding confused civilians toward the safe zones we'd designated specifically for this kind of scenario. The zones were reinforced sections on the opposite side of the station, behind 3 redundant blast shields far enough away that you couldn't directly observe the reactor section. This is insane, muttered Thresh, my Valkyrian colleague, as we supervised the evacuation. We're abandoning the reactor during a critical emergency because of 3 words. Trust the protocol, I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. 18 minutes until projected containment breach. The last technician cleared the reactor section. Environmental sensors showed only 1 life sign remaining. Human. Obviously, we waited. Command center went silent except for the countdown timer and our own breathing, which sounds different for every species but universally translates to pure anxiety. 15 minutes. 14. 13. The plasma feedback reading stabilized. Just stopped climbing. Started dropping. 10 minutes. The containment field strength began increasing. 5 minutes. Reactor temperature normalized. 2 minutes. All systems green. Jack Romano's voice came over the comm. Casual as ever. Yeah. So, we're good. Somebody recalibrated the magnetic bottle wrong during last maintenance. Fixed it. Also upgraded the cooling efficiency while I was in there. Should run about 12% better now. The silence in the command center was deafening. Jack, I said carefully. What exactly did you do? Oh, rewired some stuff. Adjusted the plasma flow regulators, rebuilt part of the containment array. Pretty standard repair work. Why'd everyone evacuate though? Seems like overkill. I looked at the administrator. She looked at me. Thresh made a sound like grinding gears, which is Valkyrian for stunned disbelief. Jack, the administrator said slowly, you just prevented a station-wide catastrophe in 18 minutes. Huh. Cool. Hey, can someone bring me that coffee I left in the break room? It's probably cold by now, but whatever. The protocol saved 12,000 lives that day. Not from the reactor. The reactor was never actually going to kill anyone, because Jack Romano casually fixed an impossible problem in less time than it takes most species to file the initial incident report. The protocol saved lives by making sure nobody was close enough to watch him do it, because the 3 engineers who reviewed his work afterward, 2 quit their jobs. The 3rd just sits in the corner of the station bar now, occasionally muttering about magnetic bottle configurations that shouldn't exist. So yeah, when I tell you that we have an automatic maximum threat level protocol for when humans say hold my beer, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not being paranoid. I'm being realistic about the fact that we share the galaxy with a species that sees the impossible as a personal challenge, and the only thing we can do is get out of their way and hope they don't accidentally revolutionize entire fields of science while fixing our broken equipment. The protocol exists for one simple reason, because when humans decide to ignore reality, reality blinks first, and the rest of us need to be somewhere else when it happens. Trust me on this.